Greetings, one and all, and welcome to the Antagonist Archives.
Memory is an unpredictable thing, isn't it? Sometimes we can recall quite a lot, that we can remember almost every detail starting from our early childhood, and then there are certain things that you know you can remember, but just can't quite put your finger on where it originally came from. Heck, the worst case scenario is that you know full well the very thing you remembered existed, it's just that you've forgotten completely what the title was. So you drive yourself crazy trying to figure out what it was called, or check on the internet for months on end, hoping to find something, until you are convinced, and realize, maybe everything you did was not real. Maybe it was just a figment of your imagination, and that the very thing you knew was just nothing. But then you find it and you're like, oh, that's what it was called. I only bring this up because nostalgia plays a big role in bringing us happiness, in remembering the good times, and wanting to relive them as adults. Like replaying video games that we've enjoyed playing, watch old movies, and catch those old cartoons of Disney, Warner Brothers, and even those kinds that brainwashed us to buy our toys. But this also holds true to the villains. Yes, many times I have found myself remembering certain computer games and cartoons just based on the villain's appearance alone. That some of my conversations consisted of this. Hey, I remembered a really cool villain. Really? What made him cool? I don't know. But he looked cool. Sure, I got that way with the heroes as well, but I ended up finding myself remembering things more just based on antagonists who were so memorable and stood out more, that they tend to be, unsurprisingly, the first thing people think of whenever they recall a standalone title and or series. And why shouldn't they be? Villains from that time were really fun and entertaining to watch, more so than I could say for the heroes we cheered for, as antagonists were given certain qualities in both design and voice acting to give them their own unique appeal. And let's be honest, the majority of what we quote comes from how they deliver their lines. And we even try and imitate the voices. I know I do. Now, my memory isn't quite what it used to be, but I decided to look into one villain from an old cartoon series who I only remembered solely for his design. Though I did have a fair idea who the characters were and what the show he appeared in was about. So, I went to put right or wrong, and went through all 130 episodes of the cartoon series to see if my feelings on the show or villain have changed. With that out of the way, join me as I relive and rewatch the misdeeds of a deceptive-looking villain who brings an ancient evil in his wake, and analyze the inner workings of a deceitful adversary. And if the title of the video didn't already give it away, we are going to look beneath the villainous intent of Mumm-Ra, the ever-living
Thundercats!
Throughout the 130 episodes of the 1985 Thundercats cartoon series, Mumm-Ra plays a big role in the series, but when you break it down and watch the 2 seasons, it's not very much. At first making his debut in the second episode with a group called the Mutants, consisting of a jackal named Jackalman, a monkey named Monkeyan, and a giant lizard who is clearly the first sufferer of ending his lines with a pointless line, Slive. Mumm-Ra is an old and powerful sorcerer who works under the ancient spirits of evil that give him his powers to do his and their evil bidding. However, despite how awesome this sounds, what comes after is mostly the same dance routine where he uses someone or something against the Thundercats to steal the Sword of Omens or just outright get rid of them for good. Nice to know that he opts for the Omadon strategy of sending others except himself. Though Mumm-Ra does actually go out of his way to handle the situation himself when he needs to. However, where the problem lies is that all the characters paint him as this powerful, intelligent, evil sorcerer with no equal that the whole universe fears. But it's really hard to believe that, considering most of the time he acts like a glorified idiot who seems to pretend to be sophisticated than he actually is. He loses in nearly every episode he appears in, which wouldn't be a problem, but it's just the way he loses is always so underwhelming that the heroes outright dominate their encounters with him, or they get lucky in beating him with good old-fashioned plot convenience, that every time he loses or fails at the most simplest of things, the only thing that would suit the occasion would be this. You would probably think things couldn't get any worse, but his plans are that unsuccessful that even Snarf, the most useless and annoying member of the Thundercats, can outsmart him not once, not twice, but 6 times. And when your plans are being thwarted by an annoying, whiny, retarded-looking Pokemon, I would seriously advise you to hang your ragged cloak and bandages in shame. But there are some occasions where he fought against other characters or one-shot villains. Oh boy, they are so gonna get their butts handed to them. Powerful sorcerer infused with the powers of evil against a bunch of not-so-impressive characters. Mumm-Ra would have no trouble dispatching the— Wait, what? He loses?! No, you're not hallucinating. Mumm-Ra, the most infamous, powerful, and greatly feared evil sorcerer, loses more times in his own home that he would break Krillin's world record for getting owned. That makes no sense! How in the heck can he gain so much notoriety for being evil and powerful if every pathetic Tom, Dick, Harry, and wrestler wannabe called the Demolisher can make it look possible for even me to beat him with a stick?
You dare challenge Mumm-Ra, the ever-living? You will suffer a fate worse than— Ow! What in the name of— Ow! Why, you— That's it, I'm going to— Oh! Oh!
What? You knew this was going to happen. This is my stick, after all. Though we can give him some credit, as he actually gets his hands on the Sword of Omens multiple times. Great! Now that you have the sword in your possession, you can do research on it, find out how to wield it yourself, look into how the Stone of Fundera works, find out how to use it against the heroes, or you could just throw it into a black hole. What do I know? To the heroes' surprise, they notice how often they lose the sword, so they create a fake one time to be stolen by the mutants, who then give it to Mumm-Ra. Yeah, like heck, the powerful sorcerer of the universe could ever be tricked by something like that.
The eye of Thundera is mine!
Wait, surely he can't possibly believe that he's holding the real thing.
The Sword of Omens! But—
Ha! A fake, Mumm-Ra!
No!
How could he not notice the Sword of Omens was a fake? He held the real sword on multiple occasions in his hands. He even had it on his wall as a frigging trophy, for crying out loud. And you're trying to tell me Mumm-Ra, the most powerful sorcerer in the universe, cannot sense the difference between an all-powerful plot-convenient sword filled with tremendous power over a fake that has no magic power at all? That dumb button-upper! Seriously, in many instances, he does a few stupid and even questionable things, like this.
Good must overcome evil in unarmed combat.
Are you ready, Mumm-Ra?
Any time, disciple of good.
Really? You, an evil sorcerer, telling your arch-nemesis that you're going to fight hand-to-hand without magic in a fair fight? Are evil sorcerers known for being trustworthy now? Huh. That explains a lot, actually. He even also commits the most unforgiving and pitiful act that no villain, or even he alone, should never be caught dead doing. No pun intended. He begs for his life. No, I am not going to entertain this idea, as the very notion of him pleading for his life from anyone is just wrong and doesn't fit with what we know about his character. You tell me honestly, can you really see an imposing and cruel sorcerer who looks like this, on his hands and knees begging like a common weak minor antagonist? Of course not, it's frigging Mumm-Ra! A villain like this would rather do anything than show weakness to their enemy. This is just as bad as Death pleading for his life from Dante's Inferno.
No. Please.
Other than that, he makes only a few more stupid decisions. Oh, nothing too big. Except release the Star of Thundera. Why the heck did he decide to open it? It held the power of a star. Surely someone with 2 living brain cells to rub together would know full well that if you release a star right in front of you, it's going to blow up in your face.
He's an ass. And he's dumb. He's a dumbass.
Let's face it, if I had to play the fail horn for every time he fails, the horn would break down at a quarter before the halfway point of the first season. Holy crud! You survived that?! I'm impressed that you're alive after what should have cremated you and scattered your ashes all over Third Earth. Though he doesn't come out unscathed, as he is horribly weakened, requiring most of his power in order to survive the explosion. It is then he recuperates and asks the ancient spirits of evil to restore his powers, which they do along with increasing his powers. It would be that point onwards where plenty more situations begin to arise, including the search for the lost treasures of Thundera. Our heroes head on out to find them before Mumm-Ra does, and oh boy, here we go again. Snarf and his nephew Snarfer get caught by him. Wait, what? He then disguises himself as Snarfer to trick the Thundercats into bringing him with them to find the treasures of Thundera, and at the last moment beats them in the battle for the chest, catch him off guard, and even though the treasures were scattered, he still gets his hand on the most important one, the Book of Omens, and after calling the mutants over, he gives them the fake Book of Omens to lead the Thundercats on a wild goose chase? Wow. Sure, in the end he loses and the heroes get back the Book of Omens off him, but I'm still suffering from blunt force trauma that our antagonist actually did something right. And cleverly for a change. And funnily enough, it doesn't stop there. I know, shocking, isn't it? He actually begins accomplishing some of his plans, getting things done right. Though there are still moments where there is a slight bit of stupidity laced in there from time to time. Though I will say that even though he gets beaten, he's not outright defeated. Though there are times when he actually possibly died. I know that should sound shocking, but he just pulls a Dracula and comes back to life with the help of his masters. So even if you kill him, he just comes back to, undead life. The cheating bastards. They've given him the unlimited use of the Konami code. He even got so threatening that when given only 24 hours to get rid of the Thundercats for good, he was given great power to cause a great global catastrophe and become so huge that I would affectionately name him Mummzilla. Just because, well, you know, Villains 101. Bad guy plus more power equals big. Same time next week. It's very interesting to note here that the second season of the series introduces Mumm-Ra's faithful dog, Marmot, who takes any order and does whatever he commands. Now, Mumm-Ra shows little care for anyone in the entire series, and even treats everyone like inferior trash. But to Marmot, he shows great care and, dare I say, affection for.
What is it, my pusillanimous pet?
Marmot, my horrendous hound.
I love you too, Marmot, my ravaging beauty.
In his own way, of course. I guess it just goes to show that even evil villains at least have one best friend in the world. Man's best friend. At the end of the series, Lion-O defeats Mumm-Ra, but he's still left alive as the series finale episode closes out, leaving it open-ended. Yes, there was never a third cartoon series, but interestingly enough, the story did continue. Allow me to explain. At the time, there were comic books made by Star Comics, who were owned by Marvel. These comic books, though, were mostly retellings of certain episodes, while others of the 24 issues told original stories. But after that, Wildstorm Productions created the actual continuation from where the original cartoon series left off. These were 5 different stories that were made into 5-part story arcs, with the very first issue taking place right where it left off, while the other story arcs take place in different times after the fact, and of course each one has Mumm-Ra involved. The last comic that was printed was by DC, who created an issue of the Thundercats, crossing over with none other than Superman!
It is glorious!
Sadly, I can't go into detail about what happens in these comics, as I do not own any copies, but they will still be documented, as they do exist, and all of them have Mumm-Ra involved with their stories. There's also a 2011 reboot of the Thundercats series, and much like the original, Mumm-Ra also plays the role of main antagonist in this series, with minor changes to his part in the story. In summary, after being sealed for thousands of years, Mumm-Ra attacks the people of Thundera, now a kingdom instead of a planet, wanting to take the Sword of Omens, as he claims the Eye of Thundera within its hilt once belonged to him, but whether his claims are true or not is debatable at best. As this series is still fairly new as I record this review in 2012, I will not be covering much on this reboot, which is currently still ongoing. But what I can tell you is that this series greatly improves on the original, and also vastly improves Mumm-Ra as the main villain as well. So after all this long history, what are we left to think? To be honest, for a well-remembered and well-liked villain, he starts off as completely inept, making a complete mockery of his own villainous title by being stupid and ineffectual, which is quite frankly, with a villain who has this great build-up of holding the powers of ancient evil, is a crime. However, as the series goes on, he does become more competent at the evil he causes, that there are moments you feel he deserves that ever-living title he boasts so much about. But due to 80s writing of showing that evil never wins, it's very difficult to consider him any form of threat other than an epically huge nuisance. The reboot improves him tenfold by having him actually accomplish bigger things, and makes him more cleverly cruel, that suits his title and makes more sense. So while his story overall is good and has some great moments that outshine all the face-palming, fail-horning ones from the original, it's still hard to ignore his past transgressions, even if the slate is wiped clean.
Obviously, I expected too much. You dare to taunt Mumm-Ra? You shall see my power then, much to your sorrow.
Working under the ancient spirits of evil, Mumm-Ra is a powerful foe to contend with, as his power is immeasurable, being able to do anything. Just think of him like Omadon in power, except we actually get to see more of his magic at work. From the original series alone, he employs many different types of magics, and even skills from his 1,000 years of living, as he holds many offensive and defensive spells, curses and hexes that make Hogwarts wizards look like amateurs. He also has great skills with the sword that equal or outclass Lionos to a certain extent, which interesting enough, he didn't gain his own personal sword, called the Sword of Plunder, until partway through the second season, which improves his swordsmanship even more. He can even transform not only to his powerful ever-living form, but also to Super Mumm-Ra, which... Arnold Schwarzenegger! I didn't know you were in this cartoon! Oh, this is... Oh, wait. It's just Mumm-Ra in an Arnold Schwarzenegger costume. Aww. These forms strengthen his magic, but he can also change to any form he desires, even into flies that get owned. Is it me, or have all the villains I reviewed so far have at least one transformation technique? How do they even get these things?
Price check for the Buff Undead Deluxe. With makeup included.
This skill is possibly one of the best and most overused sly tricks that it comes out with, as it brings up the dilemma of who can we trust, and whether they are really who they say they are. At first he uses it to great effect, but it soon loses its edge when we the audience see him transforming into these forms on screen, though it doesn't help that he can't keep up the act for long.
Well, what are you waiting for, Thundercats? Dig!
What? That's odd. Snapper would never talk to us like that. Oh well, back to doing this important thing that we don't want Mumm-Ra to be close to. Doopy-doopy-doo.
Some good examples that demonstrates the power he holds include being able to cast a spell from another planet, cause great catastrophe on a planetary scale, have any spell he casts on the day of a total eclipse to last 100 years until the next total eclipse, and he can even resurrect the dead. Is there anything that he can't do?
Mumm-Ra! How can it be? I have sought to free him for 3 centuries and never found his prison.
You have all that power and yet you couldn't find ruins, even with all that free time to look for it? Ugh, why do I even bother questioning these things? The only problem when concerning his magic is that even though he holds great power and many different kinds of spells, he strangely opts for hypnotism tricks more often than anything. Like controlling with hypnotic suggestion, a mind control spell, even uses drugs. Okay, granted the last one may not be magical, but you get my point. You would think that a powerful sorcerer would resort to hypnosis most of the time, but then again I was only a level 10 chaotic evil sorcerer in Dungeons and Dragons, so what do I know? There is a huge shopping list of many other skills he holds, involving using machines, alchemy before it was considered cool on World of Warcraft, and even borrows Omadon's soup that sees anything anywhere.
Ha 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 ha! I'm watching you make stew.
What, you don't believe me? Just look at this! If that's not magic soup he is stirring, then I don't know what it is. Even with all these strengths to his advantage, he does have some weaknesses. At first, he suffered the stupid weakness of not being able to stand the sight of his own reflection, which would weaken him and make him return to his sarcophagus to regain his strength. Why in the heck would an evil villain who works for the ancient spirits of evil be, oh screw it, if I start now we'll be here for 2 days and nights? And throughout the whole series he only tries to overcome this once, with special glasses. But thankfully gets rid of this weakness after getting an increase in power. Yay! And it only took him over 74 episodes to start what should have been fixed straight away. The reboot, however, shows that his biggest weakness is bright light, which was also briefly touched upon in the original series. This weakness in the long run makes more sense, when considering his character and the powers of evil he holds. Though there are other big disadvantages, like in the original cartoon series, if he ever got into a weakened state, he would have to return to his sarcophagus to rest and heal. But this has not yet been touched upon in the reboot to date. Also, it is to be noted that he can also be weakened if anyone destroys one of the 4 statues that represent the ancient evil spirits he follows. As a whole, taking his disadvantages into account, his upsides greatly outmatch the downsides, making him probably one of the most strongest villains I have reviewed thus far. The problem again lies squarely on the writers at the time, setting up this pretty awesome, strong antagonist for the heroes to fight against, and then proceeding to make him inept at the most inopportune times, when it makes no logical sense considering the sheer magnitude of the power he holds. While again the reboot improves this aspect greatly by actually making him competent with his strengths, but regardless of these flaws, the very ancient evil wrath he holds still leaves a great impact.
Your puny powers are no match for me.
Considering it was the 80s, Mumm-Ra's motivation was very common, as he had first wanted the Sword of Omens and the Eye of Thundera in his possession, but his reasons for what he was going to do with it were very fickle, as he initially wanted to use them himself for his evil deeds, then decides to destroy it, then change his mind to use it for something else, then go back to destroying it, put it up on his wall as a trophy, or sell it on eBay. Okay, that last one was a lie, but you get my point. But after he fails to get the Sword of Omens, his motivation changes to wanting to destroy the Thundercats. Some would say it's because, well, he's evil, and evil destroys good, but that could be farther from the truth, as Mumm-Ra's simple desire for their destruction is more to do with his pride, since he got beaten and humiliated by them so many times, so it's only natural that this evil sorcerer would at least want to reclaim his honor as the most powerful supreme feared being in the universe. It's not said outright, but it's plainly obvious when you think about the situation, and the sudden change to the object of his goal when he couldn't use the Eye of Thundera like he wanted. Though at times he does kinda change his mind on what he wants to get his hands on.
The Eye of Thundera, the enchanted golden helmet of Anu, the golden sphere of Seti.
I want that one.
Sometimes getting these said items he desires does help him out somewhat against the Thundercats, with some degrees of success, but given half the chance if any item could give him more power, he would go and do the most idiotic thing, that you would think that he had just dropped 10 levels in intelligence.
I have regained the golden sphere of Seti, Marmot, and that means I have no further use for these ancient spirits of evil. They are redundant, useless relics of a bygone era.
Mumm-Ra, you might not want to say all this right in front of the very spirits that gave you your powers that you're planning to ditch. Only saying it might help. Again, the reboot improves this aspect a lot, with him wanting what he considers to be rightfully his back. It makes his motivation more personal and gives him a more stronger driving force to go against our heroes. So in the end, it all comes down to a mixture of hunger for power, greed, pride, and a deep desire to reinforce his dominance across the planet he resides on, and mayhaps even the universe. With this motivation, one could either take it or leave it, but this was and can still be considered a decent enough reason for one's evil actions. When you're an all-powerful sorcerer powered by the magics of pure evil, you have to think big, and with that, hold a great resolve, and like the power he brags about, his ambitions are immeasurable.
Don't be deceived by appearances.
With a villain that holds so much power, and an evil will behind him, it would take a very distinctive voice to embody Mumm-Ra's character. And it does not disappoint, as the late Earl Hammond in the original cartoon series gave him a voice that, even though sounds like your typical 1980s villain with a real hammy voice, still brings an imposing presence, though he can be a tad overdramatic.
And wherever evil exists, Mumm-Ra lives! Mumm-Ra lives! Mumm-Ra lives!
He's really good at this. I know, that man deserves an Oscar. Due to how he speaks, though, I found myself mishearing what he said at points.
I am pleased to see that you are so agreeable.
Assholes agreeable?
Gather your miserable milks.
Miserable milks? Ah!
The Thundercats romp and play unmolested.
Yeah, not going to touch that joke. Compared to the original, Robin Atkin Downes' performance in the Reboot series really emphasizes the decrepit ancient feel to his character. Though unlike the original, when he transforms, they lower the pitch of the voice slightly each time, which is a nice touch. Appearance-wise though, not much has been changed in his design, as in his original state, he looks like a walking dried-up mummified corpse, with a red robe and eyes, which makes him not only deceptive-looking, but also matches his cruel personality, and fits what the very essence of evil should look like if it was given physical form, with no clear signs of any goodness from his appearance.
My sword and my skills cannot be bought, Mumm-Ra son. I fight only for honor against evil.
And that is exactly why you are here.
Really? One look at his unusual glowing red eyes, and obviously evil appearance, and you think he's a good Samaritan? Alright, I know. Tell no lies. The only biggest changes come in the form of slight modifications in his ever-living form, when they replaced his cape with demon wings, which suits him a lot more better compared to the originals that made him look like Bizarro from Superman. There's not much difference between Mumm-Ra's normal ever-living mode and his super one, except for a slight lame change to his chin and face structure. So as a villain, the presence he holds is very strong, with a simple yet memorable design that brings out the very evil he proudly praises, and no matter which voice actor you hear, they both turn in entertaining and very different performances that flaunts his sinister ways. Appearances may deceive, but this is one villain you should reconsider looking twice at. This antagonist has been really difficult for me to decide on what my final thoughts should be, as Mumm-Ra has great power and a memorable design that would stay engraved in your memory just based on how cool he sounds and looks. And even though the reboot treats him more kindly and makes him into a bigger threat, his original antics cannot be ignored, as the writers of the original series just wrote him in there as an all-powerful, clever, evil being, and then proceeded to make a walking contradiction out of him by making him illogically, mind-bogglingly stupid for the writer's purpose just to make the heroes look good, and hammer in the lifelong lesson of good will always triumph, cause evil is dumb. It's sad that he only has a few redeeming shining moments, where there are times when he is actually clever, or does something right, cause it's those moments that actually feel right, where the heroes have to go through an uphill battle against the villain, which the reboot gets right, but the original does a complete reversal of that, making the antagonist go through this uphill battle to overcome the heroes, which feels wrong to what should make not only a great villain, but a series interesting. And after rewatching all 130 episodes, it's very obvious to me that he was only made this way to buy these toys. They are super cool and awesome. I am Devar, and I must go to my closest toy shop to get these toys, and you should too.
Snap, 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 snap.
Ah!
Snap,
Someone!
snap, snap,
Anyone!
snap, snap,
Help me!
snap, 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 snap. Snap, 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 snap.
Don't worry, Devar.
Snap, snap, snap.
I'll take care of this.
Snap, snap, snap,
The power of Warner Brothers compels you!
snap,
The power of
snap,
Warner
snap,
Brothers
snap,
compels
snap,
you!
snap, 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 snap.
Oh, so cute. Thank you, Professor Van Helsing. You saved my life.
Well, it's all a day's work for snarfisms. Now, I would indeed love to stay and chat, but you know, evil never sleeps. I'll see you around, my old friend. Oh! The bloody door. Stop it!
That is it. That's it.